Well, welcome to the first X's and Omar show of 2019, the first show of the new era of the Miami Dolphins, Dave. New. See, I'm your host, Omar Kelly.
I'm old. I'm not part of the old era, Omar.
Brian Flores will become the 13th Dolphins head coach and the 5th that I've covered during my era as a columnist and a beat writer. This is Dave Hyde, Sun Sentinel's award-winning columnist, and he goes back as far as the Don Shula era.
I've covered them all but George Wilson. I've covered 12 of the 30, and the amazing part, about 10 of them have come in every couple years here.
Yeah, pretty much the last 15 years. This franchise believes that they've worked their way back to the time of the restart, rebuilding, renewing, taking a new approach under Chris Grier. That's what the Dolphins are accustomed to, that what they're familiar with. We have a new era, Miami Dolphins. Chris Grier is the leading man. Steve Ross has handed him all controls, and his first decision is to hire Brian Flores as the franchise's 13th head coach. Was this the right hire, Dave?
I have no idea. I mean, everybody can sit there, there's about 8 hires in the NFL right now, and nobody knows if any of them will work, okay?
That's true.
And Brian Flores, you like what he did in New England, you like the energy he brings, and the young, up-and-coming mindset from a successful franchise, but
I also like the fact that he's a defensive guy. We've had a long string of offensive coaches that have not fared very well. He's a defensive guy, and he's also a leader, supposedly, allegedly.
I mean, what is it? Okay, he's a defensive guy. For years, it was the
background.
offensive guy. Go young, go.
I'm tired of the offensive guy.
It's an individual thing. Can the guy do it? And I think you struck on the right word, leader. And Dolphins, for years, Adam Gase was not a leader. He was an exit.
I think he was a leader.
Wow.
Come on, he led the team to a playoffs run in the first season. He was immature. I will tell you that.
Okay, can a leader
Be
one
immature?
of the words I would never use with a leader, especially on a football team, is immature. And he was
Okay.
very immature. So anyways, if Brian Flores, and look, there's no sense hopping on and saying he's this or that. He'll play out. He'll show us who he is. But I agree with you that a leadership guy, a leader, is what they need.
What I like about this hire and what I like about the power structure that Steve Ross has put in place is the fact that both Chris Grier and Brian Flores have minimal egos, or at least that's what we've seen. I could say I've seen that from Chris Grier because there's been a lot of egos in the Dolphins front office, and none of it has come from Chris Grier over the years, and he's been here since 2000. So
I have no problem with egos. Don Shula had an ego. Jimmy Johnson had an ego. Successful people can have egos, but what you're saying is, okay, they're going to work together, right?
we hope, because when they face adversity, that's when you really
But
start
the structure suggests they will work together. I mean, Chris Grier is not only the guy reporting to Steve Ross, but he hired Brian Flores. It's
who
his guy.
comes from a guy with the same background as him, learning how to build a team through the Patriots way.
So I like the structure. Now, it comes down to individuals and
Execution.
it comes down to the draft. I mean, let's be serious, right? That's the starting point.
I don't think it just comes down to the draft. You can go out there and you can make some free agent moves as well with the quarterback if you choose to do that. But it doesn't seem like that will be the approach, and we will actually get into that. And the word that we're not really supposed to say, which is exactly what the Dolphins are doing next season. Our first question comes from West Virginia Fins fan. Coaches who try to take the Bill Belichick approach to other franchises usually fail. Do you think Flores will be bringing the Bill Belichick way with him, and if so, can it be successful?
Well, that is the central question right now to the Brian Flores era. And we don't know. We're going to have to let it play out and watch who he is and what he does. But to think he's not going to bring a lot of Belichick, and I'm not talking personality here, I'm just talking how he's going to run his team and his mindset. Bill Belichick was his North Star in the NFL. It's the only guy he's followed since 2004. So, of course he's going to bring Bill Belichick. The question is, does he try to be Bill Belichick? And that's where a lot of guys have failed.
I don't necessarily know if a lot of guys have failed. I think everybody hires Bill Belichick proteges since Cleveland, because I don't count Cleveland, because there was nothing magical about Cleveland, which is why he was fired in Cleveland. what I'm counting is the Patriots way, the secret sauce. You know, you got Romeo Crennel, you got Charlie Weiss, you got Eric Mangini, Josh McDaniels, Matt Patricia. He's about to fail.
And they've all failed.
Bill O'Brien hasn't failed. Bill O'Brien hasn't failed.
He hasn't succeeded either.
He has not succeeded either. But Patriots proteges from Bill Belichick have 120 and 167 record with one playoff win, Dave. One playoff win.
So why do you say they don't fail? They do fail.
They do fail.
Okay.
What I wrote in a Sentinel column is I have a problem with people thinking they're going to get the secret sauce from Bill Belichick. Because really, what Bill Belichick does is he works off the Bill Parcells blueprint, which we've all been on before, and he just plays a game where he morphs into whatever your weaknesses are is what he's going to attack, and then he does it with Tom Brady. But it's Tom Brady that's the secret sauce. When you have the greatest quarterback of all time, and I don't take any disrespect from Bill Belichick because he's a first ballot Hall of Famer, but when you have the greatest quarterback of all time, those pinpoint passes you saw in the Kansas City game, the execution that you saw against the Los Angeles Chargers. Yeah, God, I miss San Diego. It's like I want to shed a tear every time I think I don't get to go back. But there's no secret sauce to the Patriots. There's Tom Brady. And if Tom Brady doesn't come... I would
disagree with you from this standpoint. Who's better, Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady?
Tom Brady.
Come on, if you're picking, who do you want?
Tom Brady.
By that much? Is he six Super Bowls to one Super Bowl better?
No.
Okay, well then there is some secret sauce to Bill Belichick. What he does, he has turned that roster over about 5 times in those Super Bowl runs, and he wins in all different ways. And it's not to me, he is so much more modern and smarter than Bill Parcells. Bill Parcells get big guys, run into each other, be physical. Bill Belichick is, and look at his system of just coaches. You went through the list. He's had now, with Brian Flores being the 5th, 5 defensive coordinators. And what he does, he raises up coaches. Flores came in 2004. Matt Patricia came in 2004. They had no experience coaching. He teaches his coaches how to coach in the way he wants them to coach, and not just players. So there's a great system in place there, and it's brilliant what he's done there, and it won't be matched again.
It certainly won't be matched again, but it also won't be matched by somebody who's been his protege.
Right.
It's just the reality of it. Luke Fader asks our next question. Do you think Brian Flores can hold a locker room through a rebuilding of 2 years?
Well, I think he's going to be able to hold the locker room from the standpoint that the guys on the roster will be part of the rebuild. I really hope they do get rid of headaches. Do not have Brian Flores inherit a team of headaches, because if you're going to tank, if you're going to rebuild, I said the word, Omar, if you're going to have this master 3-year plan, you can't have guys who are going to be only in for themselves in the short haul, and that could be a problem.
See, here's the problem I have with what you're saying there. Every NFL player, at a certain point, when they realize, hey, this is a business, they become in for themselves. They start to look out for numero uno.
Well, everybody looks out for themselves.
Yes, and Brian Flores has addressed it. He says it's very hard not to be selfish, but the good, successful teams, I disagree with him, always put the team first. There are individuals who do put the team first, but there are moments and instances where the team becomes secondary in their mind. You think Tom Brady hasn't had some me first moments or thoughts or tactics or antics? Even though he's the second income in his household, he's still got some me first moments. He still makes sure he's one of the top 5 paid quarterbacks.
He's giving back $10 million a year.
All right, yeah. He doesn't need it.
Well, okay, but it's an ego thing. But look, in the off season, it's all about you. This is my theory on pro sports. In the off season, it's all about you. You get your contract, you get your playing time. You can complain to the press or the coach about how you're being used. Once the season starts, I want guys in there who are going to help the team, and that's really the separation between selfishness and unselfishness. It can happen. It can be the same way.
Look at the veteran here bringing us veteran wisdom.
Yeah, there you go. All right, Omar. Omar Polino wants to know, Pats were 3rd in rushing attempts in the NFL last year. Will Flores bring back the run-first mentality?
Well, right now, considering I would struggle to name you the playmakers or the tight ends or what kind of offensive line the Dolphins are going to have, I can name you 2 running backs who will be back next year, Kenyon Drake and Kalen Ballage. And I think that they have talent to carry a running game. Even though we haven't seen Kenyon Drake do it, he led the team in touchdowns last year. I think he has a talent to carry an offense. Right now, I can't even name you a more talented player on the team. So I think he's going to have to carry the offense.
Yeah, and the Patriots weren't a run-first team. They became, they were so
They
smart.
became a backs get the ball first team.
Yes, and they also became, as you looked at lighter linebackers going to combat a pass-first league, Bill Belichick smartly said, I'm going to play a fullback, and we're going to play some power running games against teams that can't stop that. And so
Dolphins were one of the first.
They were, and so I have no idea what they're going to, how much they're going to run and all that, but I would predict they're going to have a fullback on this team next year.
I mean, they had an H-back in yeah, okay.
Okay, we don't want to. All right, Omar. It's been well reported the Dolphins will be embarking on something so controversial there are rules involved. Much like Fight Club, the first rule of tanking is you don't talk about tanking. I mentioned it. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have done it. But the Dolphins...
You're going to ruin it, Dave.
The organization openly admits they are rebuilding and will be doing so playing young people and closing Steve Ross's wallet for the first couple of seasons. This is an unexpected approach for this franchise, but the goal is to embark on a do-over of Suck for Luck.
Suck for Luck, 2007.
I was all for that. Nostalgia. With the desired outcome of being bad enough to land one of the top quarterbacks in the 2020 NFL Draft. Is this the wise approach, Omar?
You know what? You were all on board the Suck for Luck train. I was adamantly against it.
But let me throw in before we get, there's one difference though. I was only on board about mid-season because you realize this season's going down and okay, let's pull the plug on it. They are going in not only to a season but into an off-season planning to suck for whoever we can get into 2020.
Tua! Or Herbert, I'm not necessarily sure. But there are going to be arguably 3 quarterbacks that have the potential, because we never know who's going to have a rough junior season. There was a time when the Arizona quarterback, Josh Rosen, was viewed and perceived as a can't-miss, sure thing first-round pick, and look what happened to him. You just never know. So, but we're going into this season with the understanding that, hey, this organization, this franchise, plans to be bad to put themselves in a position where they can easily get a quarterback.
Do you like the approach?
I like the approach because if Dolphins weren't going to get Andrew Luck that year, they would have ended up with Robert Griffin III. So if we're going to do this, let's be...
And Kirk Cousins.
Well, Kirk Cousins was taken in the 3rd round, but if we're going to be bad, let's be really bad. Let's be, we're not going to have to trade up for the number 1 pick bad.
See, I don't like this approach. I don't
You
like
don't?
it. Now, let me separate this saying. I like that they're not saying we're close, as they always do. And boy, next year with a couple moves, we can make the playoffs.
Yeah, what I loved was Chris Greer coming out and saying, hey, when we made those playoffs in 2018 and 2016, it was really a mistake. What we did afterwards.
That doesn't make any sense, though.
From his standpoint, because they made the playoffs, everybody was like, we got to keep this going.
Nobody said that. In
Yeah,
2008, I was here. The organization said, we're not there. We're smart enough to realize, yeah, we made the playoffs, but everything went perfectly. We're not there. Now, the mistake is they believed in the Wildcat a little too much. Okay? But I mean,
Pat White for it.
2016, the mistake was they gave Adam Gase all his player control and contract control. Okay, so
Hey, you give him the contract with player personnel control?
you can't have a great year and be smart. That's what he's saying.
What he's saying is they didn't have smart years in what followed, and they fast forwarded or put the dish in the microwave, trying to speed up the cooking process, and that wasn't the right way to do it.
Here's my problem with what's going on. if you're not smart enough to get a franchise quarterback without having the first pick overall in the draft, you're not smart enough to build an organization around them. Very few teams need a top 3 quarterback. Look at who made the playoffs year. The final 8 teams. Okay, the Rams had the number 1 quarterback in Jared Goff because they traded up for him, right? The Eagles had the number 2 quarterback in Carson Wentz because they traded up for him. Patrick Mahomes, they traded up for. Okay, Tom Brady. I mean, you can go down the list.
What do you want? You want to shoot the layup, or you want to shoot the 16-foot jumper?
I want to be smart. I want a smart organization, well run, and thinking things out. And
they've thought this out, Dave.
And to me, tanking does not work in the NFL.
They have thought this out, Dave.
It doesn't work.
I don't disagree with you. I just know what they want.
They want to be the Cleveland Browns, right?
Or Oakland Raiders.
There's your model. Well, with the Oakland hadn't come out of it. Cleveland's come out of it. They're coming out of it. 5 years. 5 years, and they haven't had a winning record. Maybe next year they will, right?
They got a talented roster.
So, for instance, this year, what about Kyler Murray? What if he's there for them? Do they just say, no, our plan is to be awful and go to 2020?
Let's not jump ahead of ourselves here. Question, Phil wants to know, which current Dolphins player stands to benefit the most from this regime's changes?
Well, nobody's going to benefit in the short run.
Oh, I disagree with
Nobody
you. Charles Harris should benefit. Now, if he doesn't benefit, then you definitely know you have wasted a first-round pick. But when you're going with a multiple scheme and you're going to utilize a 3-4, well, he fits a 3-4. He does not fit a 4-3. And finally, he's going to be put in position, you hope, to be successful.
Omar, he hasn't set the edge, though, right? He cannot.
He has a 3-4 outside linebacker. He doesn't need to set the edge anymore.
All right. DolphinsTalk.com asks, which line needs the most help right away, offensive line or defensive line?
I love my big uglies. I love the trench play. I'm a fan of the offensive lineman, but defensive line, that thing needs to be rebuilt from the rooter to the tutor. I mean, if you're going to run 3-4 concepts, the number one thing you need is a nose tackle. And nose tackles are the hardest position to find in football outside of the quarterback. They are the second hardest thing to find. You can find pass rushers. Every team's got one of those. Every team doesn't have a nose tackle. Every team doesn't have a 340-pound power pig who can take on 2 blockers and not get moved. That's going to be hard to find, and I think that has to be the number one priority this offseason.
Boy, I would say the offensive line from the standpoint, you are structuring this whole rebuild. Evidently,
on a quarterback you'll eventually get.
And when the idea being, when you bring in that quarterback, you better have help for him. And that starts with and we've said it for 20 years, the offensive line. So to me, that's your priority.
That's so short-sighted, Dave, because you haven't been able to stop the run for nearly 5 years, and
you're not going to worry about stopping the run next year, Omar.
Well, you're not really, but you can't let every team just punk you. Brian Flores says he wants a physical, tough football team. You don't do that without a nose tackle. You don't do that without being able to stop the run at the line of scrimmage.
Look, the Patriots got Danny Shelton for a 5th-round pick. You can find a big fat guy to put in the nose tackle, right? I mean, that's not your priority.
I mean, but the Patriots, you know how they do things. If it came to Miami, it would have been a 2nd-round pick.
That's probably true. All right, Omar. James has an important question about free agency. Will Juwan James be back next year, or will we try to replace him?
Juwan James is probably going to be the top free agent the Miami Dolphins have, outside of maybe Xavier Howard, who might be on the trading block, depending on what you can get. Because if you ain't trading Xavier, if you're not getting a 1st-round pick, you're not getting good value back. But Juwan James, a right tackle, probably going to command something in the neighborhood of $40 million. Last year he made, I believe it was $9.4 million. Did Juwan James play like a $9.4 million player, Dave?
Well, I don't know what a $9.4 million player, but he
looks like a very good starter.
He is an average and a decent starter. I really believe that in the right system, when he's asked to do the things that are his strength, I'm fine with Juwan James. So to me, the question on Juwan James, and it's a tough question, is what's our timeline here? What is our timeline to be decent?
To be decent, you would say in 3 years. But here's the problem that I have. You're not going to give Juwan James in a rebuild $40 million. Somebody's going to give him $40 million. You're not going to.
I don't disagree.
Now, how do you replace him? Jesse Davis is a right tackle. He's moved inside to guard. right tackles are harder to find than guards. You already know that Jesse Davis is a decent starter in the NFL. You can put him right now out at the right tackle spot and find yourself a guard at a cheaper or a later draft pick, and
here we go again.
Save yourself some money. Save yourself some money, and develop a player that you've got locked up pretty much for another 2 years. Now, the question is, do you want to do that, or do you want to use a first or second round pick on a right tackle?
Well, I'm rebuilding my offensive line, so that's my priority. And I can't believe you're not using a first or second round pick on an offensive lineman.
Honestly,
what happened to Omar?
Honestly, those have been the biggest hits in draft picks history for the Miami Dolphins. Jake Long, Mike Pouncey, Jawan James, Laramie Tunsil. Tell me where they went wrong with first round picks on the offensive line.
The only way they went wrong is they overspent. I mean, Mike Pouncey is the highest drafted center ever. Jawan James, probably they were desperate for a right tackle, so they didn't have a choice but to take him. So,
desperate people do desperate things, or desperate teams do desperate.
They're not desperate now.
You're right. So this is just a clear, total rebuild. Flush everything and start all over. How bad do you want to be, Dave?
Well, evidently they want to be
too bad. You want to be too bad.
I don't know who's going to be. Look, if Kyler Murray's there, I'm taking Kyler Murray. I love Kyler Murray, okay? Now, they didn't like Lamar Jackson because of his durability issues. And so
Kyler Murray's smaller.
That's what I'm saying. I'm not sure the Dolphins will like Kyler Murray either.
Well, we'll get into that topic right in our next segment. One of the most difficult things in life anyone has ever experienced is a breakup, Dave. It doesn't matter how old you are or why it happened. They're all tough.
I'm thinking of my high school days, Omar.
Really? Who broke your heart, Dave?
No, it was just breakups. It was just difficult, right?
Yeah, well, I don't know if this one will be too difficult. We'll soon be living through a breakup with the Miami Dolphins and Ryan Tannehill. It's pretty much inevitable. It hasn't been done yet, but Chris Greer says no decision has been made on Ryan Tannehill because he wants to give the offensive coaches, the opportunity to evaluate Ryan and see what can be fixed, Dave. Anything can be fixed?
Look, Chris Greer's watched Ryan Tannehill for 7 years. If he needs a coach to come in here and tell him what he thinks of Ryan Tannehill, you got the wrong man for the job. Okay? He better know what he thinks of Ryan Tannehill.
Every good coach thinks they can fix a quarterback.
I know, but I'm saying, if you're Chris Greer and a new coach, a defensive coach, a guy who's never been an offensive coordinator, in the case of the guy they're bringing in too, tells you, I can fix Ryan Tannehill, and you are convinced by that, you are not the right guy for the job. I'm sorry.
So the Dolphins have basically an option where they can keep Ryan Tannehill $18.75 million, or they can cut him as a June 1st designation and get back that $18.75 million. I'm personally thinking that they might want that money back.
I'm guessing too.
I'm just going to guess that. But there are some pretty okay quarterbacks out there on the market right now looking for employment, either via trade or free agency. You got Joe Flacco. You got Teddy Bridgewater, Miami Northwestern former standout. You got Nick Foles, Super Bowl winning champion. Tyrod Taylor. Tyrod Taylor's a guy who can get you to 8-8. I don't know if Dolphins want that. Sam Bradford. Then there's Derek Carr. You could possibly trade a first-round pick to Oakland and get Derek Carr. Any of those veteran quarterbacks interest you, Dave Hyde?
Tyrod Taylor interests me. He's free, agent. He's not going to cost you much.
He doesn't have the hometown appeal that Teddy Bridgewater has.
He's not going to cost you much.
I'm not paying Teddy more than 8.
No, you don't have to pay Tyrod Taylor that. But here's a question. Let me throw this out there. Look, I think they're going to get rid of Ryan Tannehill. I've been told that. Unless there's an abrupt 180 bout face, he's gone.
Dolphins are done.
But look, if the Dolphins want a tank, who better to keep than Ryan Tannehill?
No, he'll get you to 7-9. That's not tanking, Jay.
He will not. He'll get hurt.
He'll get you to 7-9.
So who's your quarterback?
My quarterback's Teddy Bridgewater. It means something to him. It means something to this community. It gives you a veteran presence there. It gives defensive players a thought that, hey, maybe we got a chance. So I'm going that route, or I'm drafting a young one, and I'm developing, because I personally see absolutely nothing wrong with drafting a quarterback in the first round this year and drafting a quarterback in the first round next year. If you make those two guys compete, the problem I've had since I've covered this Dolphins team is they didn't believe in competition. They didn't believe quarterbacks needed to compete. That's a totally bad mindset, which has led us to where we are.
Well, and what led it is you misread who you had.
Yeah. Oh,
I mean,
misread from Ryan Tannehill.
They had Tom Brady, and they said we don't need to compete. Okay, but you had Ryan Tannehill. We don't need to compete.
And Chad Henne. Don't forget that.
Chad Henne.
Two errors of wasted time. Quarterbacks who never had to compete. To me, I'm making them compete.
All right, Omar. Jimmy wants to know, what can the Dolphins realistically get for Tannehill in a trade? Lunch?
I'm not even sure you can get. I don't know if you can get a $7 pick, because if I'm another team, I don't want to inherit that contract.
There's only one way you can get a 7th-round pick, and I agree with you, which is if you have a couple teams who you feel they feel they're out there.
A team that doesn't think that he would sign with them.
Right. Or there's two teams out there, and one team says, we'll give you a 7th round, just get them on board with us, for the reason you just said.
I'm not even sure that you can do that.
I don't know either. I agree.
I don't think there's going to be that much of a market for Ryan Tannehill, which tells you exactly what you should have thought about him. And the thing is, Washington, to me, is the only team that could potentially be in play. They've got to play without Alex Smith. But why would Washington go for Ryan Tannehill as opposed to Joe Flacco or Nick Foles or
Joe Flacco is awful. I mean, he's awful.
Ryan Tannehill is?
Well, you just said he's 7-9. Jacksonville. I mean, there are
no. Jacksonville's going to Nick Foles. That's a done deal.
Okay.
Everybody knows somehow Jacksonville's going to end with Nick Foles. If he doesn't, that's going to be surprising. Dolphin Spence asks, should the Dolphins draft a quarterback early in 2019 or wait for 2020, where it's possible that they'll be in position to get themselves quarterback like Tua Tagovailoa? How do we say this?
Tua.
Yeah, we better learn. Or Jake Fromm or Justin Herbert. Here's my problem with people saying, wait for quarterbacks in 2020. You don't know what's going to happen in 2020. One of those quarterbacks might tear his rotator cuff. The other one might tear his ACL. The next one might have a horrible season. You know who? I remember looking at the draft process last year after the draft, and I was asking around, I was like, who's going to be the number one quarterback? Who's the best quarterback in college football right now? Most people said the Buffalo quarterback. It was like 6 to 8.
Right.
6 of 8 people that I talked to said the Buffalo quarterback. He's not even on the draft radar this year. I can't even tell you his name. That's what happens in the draft process. Just like I told you, Josh Rosen was projected as a top early draft pick. When I got a midseason scouting report of all the quarterbacks, you know whose name wasn't on it? Dwayne Haskins.
Well, think of last year, Baker Mayfield at this time was not. Nobody really knew who he was, where he was going. So, look, here's my issue with, and I know it's been reported, of some ex-Dolphin employees are putting it out there, the Dolphins are taking a guy in 2020. That's their whole plan, okay? So that's going out to national reporters, okay? The idea, it's faulty from this standpoint. They hadn't even done their homework on this draft completely. Yep. I love Kyler Murray. Now, will the Dolphins, after they work him out and talk to him and interview him and do all their due diligence?
He might not even want to play football. I'm just saying.
Yeah, he might not.
You came across real lackadaisical about whether or not he wants to play football or baseball, and he's in position to control his own destiny, where he ends up. And give him props. Hey, not Jim Kelly, John Elway did it. You have that right.
Russell Wilson did it. I mean, he played minor league baseball. He could have gone down that route, and he decided, I want to play football. I want the ball in my hand. I want to control games rather than be controlled.
You can potentially make more money in baseball.
You can. Well, I don't know if you can make more money, but you can, as a top-line NFL quarterback, but you can make good money. So, but to me, I'm not throwing away this draft right now and saying, I'm not taking a quarterback.
If you've got a shot at taking Dwayne Haskins, even if you got to move up, I take Dwayne Haskins. I shoot that bullet. Now, the other quarterbacks, the Drew Locks, the Daniel Jones, the Will Greer, I'm not selecting any of those guys to the second round, but I would select them in the second round and invest in them and see where that takes me. Dolphin
Spence, let me ask you this. Has another good question. Should Miami avoid drafting Kyler Murray, since he seems to be non-committal to football, which we sort of went over that. He's got a decision to make, but I would assume by the time the draft rolls around, you're going to have a good idea from Kyler Murray on where his thinking is.
Here's my problem with the Kyler Murray situation. and I was okay with him as the 13th pick, if that's how your board stacked up talent-wise. However,
He'll be rising.
no. However, I'm not comfortable with him as a first-round pick anymore because of this whole lukewarm football situation, because of the whole competition that I'm going to have to make with baseball, because of the fact that he's tiny. He'll be the tiniest quarterback in the NFL, maybe since Doug Flutie. I'm not comfortable with all those things. Now, if he's there in the second round, okay, let's pull the trigger. There's a lower risk. But first round, I don't know if I'm down with it anymore.
Well, the baseball thing, you're going to have a handle on. And if you don't if you don't have a handle on it, that's a handle, right? That's telling you, I don't know what's going to happen here. I can't gamble. If he's not 100% committed to football, of course you're not going to use a.
He went to the Super Bowl and said he's not 100% committed to football.
And that was at the Super Bowl. Okay.
Oh, so his mind is going to change all of a sudden at the combine?
Yeah, by draft day it will.
And change then too?
Look, if you don't have a commitment from him, then you know where his thinking is.
Listen.
Okay, but here's what I love about him. Look, what's the hard thing to do down here? It gets hot, teams get tired, and who is going to wear you out more than chasing a guy like that around for 3 quarters, and by the 4th quarter he will own, if he can stay alive.
If he can stay alive. Pat White couldn't stay alive.
Well, that's the question.
Yeah. All it took was one hit by Pat White.
And I will say, Chris Greer is from the Bill Parcells school more than the Bill Belichick school.
Hey, Bill Parcells was ahead of the game when it came to those athletic, mobile quarterbacks. Selecting Pat White.
How did that work?
It just didn't work.
He was ahead of the game.
Yeah, he was ahead of the game. Yeah, he was before his time. I'm just saying. He did it. He wanted that spread quarterback.
Okay.
He did it.
Right.
It just didn't work out for him.
Okay, our final question comes from Trouble Omar with a capital T. What style of offense do you see us running this year? Do you see it being like New England or more the Colts, if you had to guess, because of Jim Caldwell's influence?
More like New England. What is New England?
It's everything.
They're everything. They could do everything. 2 tight ends. They could run out of the I formation. They could spread you out wide. They could do everything. Now, that's difficult to build from a personnel standpoint. So I'm not going to say they're going to be New England. What I will say is Jim Caldwell, if the Dolphins had hired Jim Caldwell as their head coach, I would have said, congratulations. Maybe you've learned from your mistakes of the past and finally said, hey, let me bring in a veteran coach. But right now, it looks like there are veteran coaches on this staff, and that's pretty impressive. Jim Caldwell's an impressive hire as an offensive assistant.
I love what they're doing for the first. Look, you have a young coach.
Yeah.
You have a first-time offensive coordinator. You have a first-time defensive coordinator. But you backstop them with Jim Caldwell on offense, who's been a head coach, a veteran. He's been around for years. He's seen everything. And on the defense, it sounds like
maybe Dom
Capers might be coming in, and they're
coming back.
The same thing. A guy who's going to give a veteran. Now we'll see what all that means. But in concept, I love it.
If it works.
Well, we'll see what it means, but in the concept, I love.
Yeah, absolutely. This is not a coach where, I believe Adam Gase didn't have a guy with veteran head coaching experience on his roster.
Adam Gase knew everything.
Yes, he did.
He didn't need to be.
He didn't need anybody leading him. It is what it is. Well, we appreciate you for watching X's and Omar. We'll probably be back during free agent time, giving you sort of a preview of what the landscape looks like for a team that's not going to be spending any money. They said, Steve Ross, put your wallet away. We're done with that, sir. And he's like, damn.
That's going to be a hard team to cover. That's what I'm thinking. How am I going to cover this team? What are the concepts that we're going to be following?
Tank for Tui. Bomb for Fromm.
Endeavor for Trevor if we're going for 2021, right?
Oh, man, we can't suffer through 2021. I don't know if we'll survive that. Well, you've survived this show. We appreciate you joining us, watching X's and Omar, which usually airs Wednesday at, I think, 1 o'clock. But thank you for joining us. We will see you in the coming weeks.